A great way to get in a creative flow or to boost your creativity is going back to basics, to tone things down if you will. Now for me, color and cardstock are great ingredients to get crafty, and using up some scraps is kind of a sport too. Now to make it totally hip, it's environmental friendlier as well, so let's get to it. I'm going to start with a piece of acetate, some paper strips, and I have a roll of double-sided adhesive. I put my paper strips in a nice order so the colors make a fun mix. Then I put my craft plastic on my notepad with lines, which will be very helpful with adding those strips. There are two ways you can go about it. The first thing is to add some tape straight to the craft plastic and then peel off the backing and add the strips on top. And the other way is to add your tape to the strips and then add them on the craft plastic. I'm using craft plastic that you can cut with a die cutting machine. And in the meantime I'm adding all those strips and I'm speeding up the process so it's not getting too boring for you. Once I have all my strips in place, I just cut off the excess bits and then I stick those bits on a piece of backing from double-sided adhesive or a sticker sheet, that will work as well, because I can use those strips again. And now I'm going to cut some card panels. I'm going to cut them to size slightly smaller than my card is. And while I'm cutting pieces of that panel, it's going to give me some more scraps and I'm going to use those too, of course. So here are all the pieces that I have together. And first I'm going to start with the scraps that I just cut off those panels. I use my ruler to line up the first piece and I'm just adding it with some double-sided adhesive. Then I'm going to add those multicolor strips and I have some foam tape to the back so they are a bit raised, which always adds some interest to a card. And then I'm going to add two small strips on the top and the bottom using some glue. And I just finished this card with a black one-word sentiment, keeping it very simple. And next I have my sticker strips and I'm going to add those to the side of a card. And if there's not enough tape all the way to the side of the strip, I'm adding just a bit of glue to make sure that the complete piece sticks. I'm adding them a bit different, so one is a bit further on the card and the other one is just slightly on the card, and I'm making a bit of a variation in that, just playing around. And don't overthink this, just go with the flow and do what looks good. So I'm filling up the complete card with those strips all the way to the top. So I'm going to add some foam tape to the back of those strips, and this way they will all stick together and I will get a raised part. So I just trim off those strips next to the card. You can use a trimmer as well if you want to. I'm just using my scissors. And then I'm going to check on the card how they look lined up next to the fold of the card. And I'm liking that look, so I'm going to add some foam tape to the back. And I peeled off all those backing pieces and then I add it in place there. And this will give you some nice dimension in the same colors as on the other side of the card, which is really cool. And this is the finished cards with some hearts and a simple sentiment. Next I have super small strips and I have a piece of card with some double-sided adhesive. I'm going to add those tiny strips at an angle, and the first ones are always the hardest. And I put my colors in a row again, making a nice color variation. And I have the backing piece still on the double-sided adhesive, which is very helpful, especially in the beginning, so you don't stick to the double-sided adhesive yourself. So I'm going to fill up the complete piece. And this is pretty straightforward. Once you have those first ones, you just line them up and push them next to the previous one. So here I have my complete filled piece. I cut off the bits that were sticking out and then I cut off two strips. And for the middle part I made a mat with two small pieces of the darkest turquoise color. And then I'm going to add those strips that I cut off above and below that middle part. And I have another simple sentiment, black on white, and I made a mat with one of the colors from my color scheme, and this makes another fun and simple card. Next we are back with those panels I made in the beginning, and I added some foam tape to the back so it's going to be a bit raised from the card, and I just add that on my card panel. And I cut 3 hexagons out of the colors that are also in the background, and I cut 3 white ones in the same size, and I'm going to make a little mat of the white ones, letting them peek out from under the colored ones. And I'm going to come back to this one in a bit. First I'm going to cut the 3 hexagons out of the other panel. And because this is craft plastic, you can use it with a die cutting machine and it will cut out perfectly, giving me 3 pretty windows. And for this panel I also added some foam tape to the back, so it's a bit raised, and I have a bunch of flowers, which is also a really cool way to use up some scraps, because scraps are great for cutting some small flowers. I have them in the 2 blue colors, and I'm going to make a little pile with the darker and the lighter color. And once I have all those flowers in place, I glue them together, and then I'm going to glue them to the background in the middle of those hexagon windows. And then I'm going to finish it with a glitter drop in the middle, just for some extra dimension and a bit of sparkle, of course. And then we have those little hexagons that we cut out of the card. And I'm adding those with some foam tape as well. And for the sentiment, I'm going to add that on those hexagons, and it's going to fall partly on and partly over my hexagons. So I have some foam tape and regular tape to make up for the difference in height. And then you can keep it like this, or you can add a few more details. And next I'm going to continue with the first panel I made. I'm going to layer them and check with my sentiment to see where I need to add it. And I have a little smudge on the blue one, so I'm going to cover that with the green one. And then I'm going to put it on my card, and I measure with the sentiment again. And once I'm happy with the placing of the sentiment and my hexagons, I'm going to add them to my card. I'm using the glue gun because it's fast and I can add a little bit of dimension in a really simple way with the hot glue. And then I'm going to add some glue to the back of the sentiment as well. And then I'm going to add it in place. And I think this makes another fun and simple card. And then I often end up with some really small strips of all kinds of colors, and I seem to have a lot of these black ones. So I'm going to add them on a double card, and I'm going to spread them a bit on the background, and you can choose to add 5 or 3 or any number that you like. You can also draw some lines with a pen, that will work as well. And it's a little less fussy than adding those strips, but I was going to use up my scraps, so here I am using up some scraps. So once those are in place, I'm going to cut off the excess bits. Small dies are great to use with scraps as well. Pre-cut a bunch to give you a little stash to grab anytime. Always great to have on hand when you are in the flow. I have a bunch of flowers in the different colors that I already used. And these are pretty tiny flowers, so they are great to use with your scraps again. Now I'm going to spread my different colors over the card, so I have a little bit of variation. And I didn't plan to, but I am going a bit overboard with the number of flowers that I'm adding, because here it's still looking pretty cool. It's getting busier and busier. And at first I thought, I don't know. And after a while, like 2 or 3 months, I thought, it's okay. It's actually a pretty fun card, and it's quite a happy card. So no matter what you prefer, a lot or a little, you can go about it in many ways. Once I have all my flowers in place, I just glue them down. And I finish with a simple sentiment on a nice one color block to make it a bit more calm. And you can go the other way around as well, with some color strips and black flowers. Now, are you ready to run or walk to your craft room and dig up those scraps, or inspired to use your papers up all the way to the end? Have loads of fun. Now, more scraps and cardstock ideas are here, all binge watch ready for you. And as always, make sure to keep on crafting.